Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Bird, founder of Acquisition Conference, coming to Salt Lake City on March 21st, 2025. And you're joining us right now with the Acquisition IQ podcast. We're joined here with Bill Kirth. He's a serial entrepreneur, investor, someone who has extensive knowledge and understanding of how to buy companies and all the different funding ways that you can do that. So we're going to dive right into it. Why entrepreneurship? Why did you go that path?
Nate, I lost a bet.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, I got started off in the as a bank auditor and found my way to banking, got bored with that, and found my way to high-priced debt. And through high-priced debt, I was able to learn a lot about companies, how they grow, how they work, and ultimately saved enough money to start my own equity fund. And from there, I've been doing a hybrid of lending, investing, hybrids such as mezzanine debt, convertible debt, and just really enjoyed a career of doing both.
Yeah. Well, as an entrepreneur and then also as a business owner out there, if you guys are watching this, we want to talk a little bit more about the intricacies of identifying your target and then being able to purchase that target by being able to leverage different financial vehicles to enable you to do so. Do you have some insight on how to do that?
Yeah, I think first off, before you purchase the company, kind of know what you're getting into, and you really need to make sure if it's an all-out purchase, that's one thing. But if you're purchasing a piece of a company, make sure that your plan for the business is congruent with the owner's plan as far as exit, when to exit, how to exit, and so on and so forth. So are we talking about an all-out purchase or more of purchasing a piece of a business?
Well, let's go into two of those scenarios. We can break down one, and then we'll step right into the next.
Okay. Well, if you're purchasing a company outright, then obviously you bring in partners, you have your own money, you put it in the business. You can do a raise to buy the company. You can also leverage the 3 F's, friends, family, and fools, are usually what's used to buy a company at the beginning. From there, you can go into angel investors if they want to co-invest with you. If they like you and you're a proven jockey and the company has legs, then they will co-invest with you to buy the company. Or you can do things like SBA acquisition loans and such. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different debt and equity, avenues to go when you're looking at something like this.
So let's go through a scenario that you faced, maybe as one who was wanting to buy a specific target, and let's walk us through that. Because of course, this could be a broad conversation, but I think it's important for us to at least understand the fundamentals as to how you step your way through. So let's talk fundamentals and let's walk us through.
So fundamentally, let's use an example of Blue Eye. So many years ago, I purchased a majority shareholder of a company called Blue Eye Monitoring. At the time, the company was not doing well. It was a very early stage and misrun. So I bought the company for a very cheap price. So I basically used my own cash and just paid cash for my shares. However, the company had a very cash-consumptive business model, meaning it always needed cash to grow. So from there, because of the history of the company, I couldn't get bank financing. It just was not performing, losing money. So I went to a local group here and did what's called a mezzanine debt or subordinated debt. Because I didn't have a lot of assets, this company gave me a loan, right? And because I didn't have assets, I gave them 4% of the company in warrants. So that's called mezzanine debt. Basically, it's debt with warrants. You don't have enough coverage for a traditional loan where you can supply a lot of collateral. So what they take in risk for the loan, you give them the equity-like risk in warrants. So they got 4% of my company. It ended up being very expensive, but at the time it was the best money I can get, and it was very helpful. So that was one example where I leveraged my own money and then the local private equity group here through their mezzanine debt.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
What are the ways that you can go about it, and maybe some experiences that you've had in the acquisition of a company? And then also from a legal standpoint, how do you structure a deal that you can get done? And maybe you can shed some light on that as well.
Well, yeah, and it really depends on if you're buying majority or minority in the company, right? In many cases, I'm a minority investor, an angel investor, so to speak. So as far as the legal side, I have attorneys who draft that up for me because they're much smarter than I am in that.
Yeah.
What I've found is being an entrepreneur or an investor and going through the companies I've lost money on, my serendipitous CEO to invest in is a CEO that's self-aware, that knows the limitations, they know what they're good at, know what they're not good at, I'm the same way. I'm usually the dumbest guy in the board meeting. So it's my job to leverage people smarter than I am to do what they do well. I do what I do well. And in this case here, I have a very smart attorney, a couple of them actually, who do a lot of this work for me.
I think it's important to understand risk mitigation, but also knowing yourself personally as far as the risk tolerance that you're willing to have. Would you consider yourself to be a high risk tolerance or mid risk?
Well, if you're investing, it's high risk because I always tell people never invest what you can't afford to lose. I have a specific fund that's aside from my savings and my lifestyle fund. It is a fund that I've created for investing in companies. And I have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've made 10 times that, but I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have to have a strong stomach and you can't be too emotionally attached. Now, we all try to mitigate the risk. You do your diligence. You try to get to know the company, the entrepreneur, the industry, TAM, SAM, and SOM, all that about the business. At the end of the day, it's risky, all right? There's no guarantee. There's no collateral. You invest and you do well or you lose.
As an entrepreneur, what do I need to have ready to get the funds that I need?
Great question.
A lot of people come to me with this as well.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so here's what it is. Number one, a dear friend of mine, Ted Mackler, always loves to say, he loves to have a yin to a yang, all right? If your skill set is A, then who's managing the rest of the skill set you need to run the company, all right? If you're strong in sales, do you have a strong operator, CFO? So you want to have a well-rounded team, right? That's part of it. There's a team. Number two, you have to have a great product or service or whatever you're selling, right? Why is it better than somebody else's? Can you protect it with intellectual property? How much traction do you have in your space? And more importantly, or as important, what is your exit strategy? And you want to make sure that when somebody comes to me for money, the first question I ask them is this company a lifestyle company or strategic exit? Some have no idea. Some don't even know what it means. The very first question you ask yourself in this is this a lifestyle company? Now, you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Because the issue is once you take private equity, for the most part, not all the time, for the most part, once you take private equity, you're promising to sell your company. All right? So if you're not going to plan on selling your company,
do not take private equity.
Be very careful who you take from. There are groups that are like a Warren Buffett type of buy and hold that live off the dividends, but those are few and far between. For the most part, they want an exit, and you've got to make sure that your idea of an exit and theirs are similar.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're coming at it from an angle of a funder, but I do believe you also have good insight as to those who are receiving the funds.
Right. And so for those receiving the funds, what I'm saying is you have to be prepared to answer those questions. As a person looking for it, you got to make sure that you're ready to answer those questions. Yes, I'm going to sell the company. Here's how I'm going to sell the company. Here's when I want to sell the company. And you align with that at the very beginning. So you're all rowing in the same direction.
That's good.
So to be prepared, number one, make sure you know your numbers, all right? How much do you need exactly? I have people come to me and say, I need anywhere from $1 to $2 million. No. Go back and tell me exactly what you need. How much money do you need? How are you going to employ that capital? How's that capital going to make more revenue and create more worth in the company? And then when do I get paid back? Those are the questions you have to know right off the bat.
Probably add 10% more than what you need every time, right? It's like building a house.
But again, the more you give up, because again, this equity is like a lifelong marriage. Right? You're married to this person for the life of the company. And by the way, it's a very ugly divorce if it happens prematurely. But you want to give up as little as possible in equity at the beginning because the further you can push it off, the more of the company you retain. I've seen too many companies go straight for equity when they don't have to. And what happens, they took in $1 million. Well, that's great. You know, my company's valued at $3 million, so it wasn't a big deal. What happens, that company's now valued at $30 million. And $300 million for that same 10% of the company or whatever you gave up. 33% in this case. It's very expensive.
So you highlighted a negative to taking on funds. Can you shed a little bit more light on the dark side of funding?
I wouldn't call it a dark side. It's just more of
the complexities of funding.
Yeah. Again, your company is your company, right? You own it. or all of it or a good part of it.
Mm.
Every time you take equity, you're systematically giving more of your company away. You're diluting. It's called dilution, right? And I've seen too much premature dilution. What does that mean? So in many cases, somebody will take, let's call it the friends, family, and fools, right? The initial pre-seed friends and family round. And then you get a little traction. Then you maybe do a seed round, get a little more traction. Now you start to hit revenue. Once your company hits revenue, you're starting to create cash flow, gross profit margin. There are ways that you can play what I call strategic debt to grow your business further, all right? What does that mean? Well, if I'm plugging along and I'm at $200,000 annual revenue, all right, I need more cash because, again, guys, growth consumes cash. Most people don't know that. Growth consumes cash. I need more money to grow. Well, if I go to equity, I give up more of the company at this very small valuation. But if I can employ strategic debt and pay a higher interest rate, but now I've got money coming to the company in debt and I'm growing on the debt. Now, if I go to the markets and I go from $200,000 to $2 million in annual revenue and I give up equity, guess what? My valuation is 10 times or so. I give up that much less equity for the same amount of cash. Another thing is that
That's
if
smart.
somebody comes to me for money and say, hey, Bill, I need your money. I got to make payroll next Thursday. I got to pay this vendor. I need that $1 million to invest in to move the company along. Awesome. That's one message. Another message is, hey, I'm doing fine. I'm cash flowing. I'm doing good. But with your $1 million, I can 5x revenue. Which one do you think gets the investment?
5x revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the guy is leveraging debt to manage his cash flow, so he's not desperate for the investor's money. He's cash flowing fine by himself. With the investor's money, you take that and you 5x it. So what I'm saying is there's usually, it's not mutually exclusive to take equity and debt at the same time. You can use them both interchangeably. And it's knowing what's out there, knowing what debt, what hybrid debt, what equity, what's out there to leverage. Because you always want to push off equity as much as possible if you can grow on debt.
Yeah.
Unless it's strategic. That's different. Now, if you've got a strategic investor, everything changes. Because they're bringing more than just, money. They're bringing their Rolodex, they're bringing their contacts, they're bringing their maybe revenue. They come with more than just money. That's differentiated, right? Now, I don't mind giving up equity because I might give up 25% equity, but strategically, they can give me 50% more revenue. That's a whole different ballgame. But that's strategic equity versus straight equity for money. Does that make sense?
So yeah, you've now explained both debt and equity, but when do you feel, and also what you've seen, a good time to take on debt or take on equity?
Take on equity when you can't raise debt.
Okay.
All right, at the very beginning. Once you start creating revenue and you can start taking on debt, if you can cash flow it, take on debt, man.
Yeah.
Grow your business before you have to do another round. Because again, you give up every time your company grows and the valuation grows, you give up less equity for the same amount of cash.
That's so good.
So why would you prematurely dilute your company?
We've just been here talking to Bill Kirth, and he's a finance professional. He's been investing in companies for many, many years. What's one of the highlights of your job as an investor, do you feel?
It's interesting. It's always fun to see how people make money and the great ideas people have. And you get to meet some really cool entrepreneurs along the way. You really do. I mean, all the professionals, right? The bankers, the CFOs, the CPAs, the attorneys, just the investors. There's so many cool people out there. And it's fun to see how people come up with ideas to make money.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what was your track record? Were you the individual who, well, it sounded like you worked in the bank and then you started your fund, right? Or Okay, got it. So you went the investor route almost immediately out of banking.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like building the company per se, which you can make money in so many different ways. It's
what I found is I have a love for debt financing, and I love doing. I still do to this day. Actually, I'm a debt financer. It's all non-bank, high risk, high reward debt, and it's fun because I've got a limited balance sheet, and I can't spend all day investing my own money because I don't have that much of it. It's a limited balance sheet, so I selectively invest in companies because with debt, your money goes out, recycles, you get interest, so it's always recycling. With equity, your money goes out, and you might come back in 5 years
or not ever see it again.
Or like in some cases, it's doing well, but it's been 10 years and it's still there. Now the company has just tremendously grown.
Yeah,
the valuation's there, but it's not in my bank yet. So with debt, though, it just recycles with interest, and it's more transactional. And I have more time in the day than I can lend on my balance sheet. So
Okay.
this hybrid of debt and equity together has been a really fun career, because I can look at a company, and there's a saying in business or in life. And the saying is, if you have a hammer in your hand,
I don't know.
everything looks
So-
like a nail. You've heard that, right?
That's good though.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, that's funny.
if I'm only doing debt, I'm going to try and take every deal and pigeonhole into debt.
Mhm.
If I'm going to do equity, I'm going to try and pigeonhole everything into equity. But doing both, I'm agnostic. So I can really sit back and look at a company and look at the forecasted financial statements and all the data points, such as industry, AR turn, inventory turn, AP turn, and so on, and really agnostically look at this thing and go, yeah, here's what's better for the company. Whether it's debt, whether it's equity, whether it's hybrid, whether it's both, it just doesn't matter. So you can really start to architect the right financing for the company, knowing that I have all the debt tools over here and the equity tools over here.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I've enjoyed doing both, learning about both, because I think they complement each other.
I can see that, and obviously you're on both sides, and you have such a wealth of knowledge and experience to be able to share with those founders out there. What are some of the real big nuggets you would want to share actually to those individuals that have the company that is growing right now?
Okay.
I mean, because again, we're going to be having you at Acquisition Conference coming up here soon, and you're going to be touching on some really good educative nuggets.
Yeah.
So,
Well, listen, to be an entrepreneur, you got to be just the right amount of crazy
I like
to get
that.
it done. And I love that. I love crazy people. I'm one of them. But I think as an entrepreneur, the hardest thing to do is to be humble and self-aware. What does that mean? I said it before. Know what your strengths are. More importantly, know what your strengths are not. What are your weaknesses? And don't be afraid to ask for help. All right? The companies I've lost money on, again, were those where they had to touch every piece of the company because they wouldn't let go, because they had to be the smartest person in the room. And it doesn't work. You can't do everything, and your company will bottleneck.
Yeah, that's so
Okay.
good.
And again, with Ted Mackley, you have to have a yin to a yang, and maybe 3 or 4 of them. But be self-aware and be willing to delegate, to take help, to ask for help when you need it.
It's interesting how you're saying that, because it gets you what you want, which is maybe the funding from an investor like yourself, or funding from a bank or something like that.
Mhm.
That's what the byproduct of what you just said gets you, which I think is really interesting.
But it's also just growth and profitability, right?
Well,
The
yes,
company's going to run better.
but if you become a better person and understanding the delegation and strategy behind running the corporation at a more efficient way,
Mhm.
getting out of your own way,
Yeah.
then again, the end result of that
Yeah.
is success.
Number
Yeah.
2, I think, of many,
Yeah.
know your numbers. You know, I'm a huge fan of every company I'm involved with of doing at least monthly forecasted financial statements for the next 12 months. I'm always looking out 12 months,
Mm-hmm.
month over month. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah,
2,
we've
3
talked
years is
about that
great,
before.
but that is where you need to know every decision I make is based on plugging it in and seeing what happens with that decision. Do I take on this customer? What's the gross profit margin? Do I take on this financing? Do I take on this? What are the implications
Mm-hmm.
of every decision based on the financial statements?
Yeah.
So important. Number 2, if you're of any size at all, create a very good board. Get a good board of directors and advisors. I sit on a few boards, and one of the things I insist on every board I'm on, is, and somewhere in the meeting, is managing a SWOT analysis. Every company should take a good hard look in the mirror every day and do a very honest and thorough SWOT analysis.
Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
And the opportunities and strengths are really easy to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's like flexing the mirror and looking at yourself.
Yeah.
The other 2 are a little more difficult, and being very self-aware. Hey, here's our weaknesses. Here's our threats. We all have them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't want to admit them or not, but we all have them. And every board meeting I'm involved with, that's one thing we have to talk about in detail, because that will drive the rest of the decisions through the board for the most part. It's based on that. And it's overused a lot, I know, but I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, that's so good. Man, there's so much knowledge that you have here as far as the amount of tools and resources. It sounds like, again, your wheelhouse that you're really good at would be debt financing, correct?
Yeah.
Of
Debt and
course,
equity
and there's
financing.
some other things, right, that you
Yeah.
really enjoy. Um,
And by
yeah,
the way, you're familiar with Connect Capital.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not doing a plug, but we started an alumni program because what happens is over the years, Connect has helped companies raise equity and get equity money, and it's great. And they would say, "Fly away, little bird," and you're done. What we found is many companies make huge mistakes on that first tranche of equity.
Can imagine.
So we started the program to stop these mistakes, to mitigate them. And whenever you do a raise, you got your money there. I plug it in and see how long that's going to last me. All right. Let's say I raised $1 million. All right. Based on my industry, let's say I'm selling B2B. I have net 45-day terms. I have to keep 6 months of inventory on hand. All that consumes cash. So once you get the $1 million in, great. Based on my revenue projections and my gross profit and all that, how long is that going to last me? Because chances are there's going to be another need for financing down the road somewhere. Because again, growth consumes cash, right?
Yeah.
What I always say also is the time to start raising equity is when you don't need it. If I raise $1 million today, I'm already thinking about that next $1 million.
True.
I'm going to plug that. It's going to be debt, equity, and I start to strategize how that next money is going to come in the company because based on projections, I might run out of cash in month 8 if things go well. If I get the revenue I'm projecting and things go well, I'm going to consume a lot of cash. You're going to be seeing on the balance sheet and receivables and inventory, and every time you increase what's on the balance sheet, it's at the expense of cash.
Mm.
So you start raising now and know what you're raising now before you actually need it.
You guys hear that? You got to raise before you need it. I mean, it's just like drinking water. You got to drink before you're dehydrated.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like, a lot of people make the financing game super complex. Again, let's leave the viewers with the foundational approaches to what is needed with funding, and then also from your perspective, why or how you fund, but also the simplicity of really how to be funded.
Well, listen, if you don't know it, get help. One of the first people I like to get involved with in a company that's growing is have a solid CFO on staff. If you can't afford it full-time, get a part-time CFO. If you don't know how to do this, find qualified help to help you navigate that because you can make a lot of mistakes. It's not rocket science, but it's certainly not extremely simple either. There's a lot to know when you're kind of navigating through the whole growth capital of a company. So hire somebody smarter than you in that area, not just smarter than you, but in that area, hire someone smarter than you to help you navigate through that and listen to them.
Yeah.
Listen, because again, nobody knows everything. And so there are people out there who know how to get from here to here while maintaining, your company, your ownership in the company, not fully or prematurely diluting your business.
Yeah.
Very
How can we support you? What's a good way to be able to get in contact with Mr. Bill Kirth?
Oh, I'm bbill@rectify.net's the email.
Okay.
I've got another company that I work with called Change Capital, which is a non-dilutive mezz debt. I got to give a shout out. It's a great product. It's a high growth product that's subordinated to a senior lender, but it's non-dilutive. It's non-dilutive mezz debt, which is fairly unique. Phone number is 801-971-8809. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Reach out to me. Love to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, again, we just want to say thank you so much, Bill, for joining us today on the Acquisition IQ podcast. And we cannot wait to bring Acquisition Conference to you in Salt Lake City on March 21st, 2025. If you guys like today's episode, please make sure to subscribe and also share this with your friends that are looking to get some funding for their companies.